Hi folks, today's video is a Q&A, so it's going to be a bit of a chatty video, so I thought I'd try a different angle. This is just me sitting at the table here, and it's nice and warm in here, and it's light and bright, so why not? It also means that I can have my computer right here and actually read the questions. The first question is from Anna Dree on YouTube, who asks 3 questions. So the first is, what made you want to go specifically into book cover design as opposed to a more general design career? So to start with, I did want to do a more general graphic design career, more doing branding and logos, things like that. But I mean, then it kind of occurred to me that there were people who designed book covers for their job. And I thought that's what I want to do, because I studied English and art history, so those are things that are very dear to my heart. And for a long time I thought that the art history and English was a bit of not a waste of time, but I thought, oh gosh, Holly, why didn't you just go and do why didn't you go and do graphic design instead of art history and actually train in what I'm doing? But actually, when it comes down to it, the English particularly, and the art history, having that knowledge of the history of art and design is hugely beneficial. So yeah, that's why, because it's really the intersection of what I love, what I'm good at, and I think that's really the most important thing to me. And also it lends itself to freelance work as opposed to working at an in-house agency, so I can work from anywhere, meaning I could move back to New Zealand as well, be close to my family. So that sort of leads on to the third question, which I'm going to ask before I ask the second question, which is it hard to adjust back to life in New Zealand after living in the UK for a few years? And actually, I found it a bit weird when I came back in April, just for a visit. That was a bit strange because I hadn't been here for 2 years, and I mean, a few things have changed, but most things hadn't changed. It's the sort of place that it kind of doesn't seem to change all that much. So that was more of a, I guess, not quite a culture shock, because it is very similar in many ways, but that was more of a shock coming back. But it reminded me of what life here is like and how much I love it here, which is why I decided to move back. It's just such a very long way away, and 2 years was too long to be away. So I'm back here now, and yeah, very glad that I've made this decision. I think it was the right one to make. So the second question from Anna Dree is, how do you decide what elements to include on a cover? Which is quite a difficult one to answer, because each cover is very different. So, I mean, you're always taking your cues from the text itself. Unless, like for my Harry Potter designs, where the Harry Potter textbooks, where it was literally just going from the title and the author's name, which was a lot of fun. I really liked that constraint and just working from that. But usually I'd read the book and I would try to extract things from the book that really represent it as a whole, or represent a large part of it. And that's where I start with my sketching, and it's quite an organic process. It's something that works itself out over time. Sometimes it comes to me very quickly, a few really great ideas, and sometimes it takes a bit longer. For some of my favorite books, where I've been dying to do a design for them, but have been sort of waiting for that idea to strike. I don't usually work like that, but if it's a portfolio piece, sometimes I'll just sort of mull it over for quite a long time. But I find that the ideas come if I really sit down and focus and just spend a lot of time going down all these different potential routes with the design ideas, and that generally will organically turn into something that I can use. A good example of that would be The Secret History, which took me a long time to come up for anything with, because I hadn't sort of done that, sitting down and really thinking about it. And then when I did that, and I did that on an aeroplane, I designed that cover, all the sketches for it, and the final drawing, pencil drawing, on that flight. And I got a lot of thinking done. I was listening to the audiobook of it at the time, and I'm really pleased with what I came up with that. So I hope that sort of answers that question. It's quite a, like I said, quite a difficult one to pin down, but give you a bit of an idea, I hope. So on YouTube, Struggling Writer asked, I still say they all look great. Thanks. That was for the Inktober drawings. Would you ever try to draw a character of your own creation? And because I'm a book cover designer, I am sort of almost by definition a fan artist, where I'm always working from somebody else's text, and I love working like that. I think that it's the most fun way of working, because you're almost translating something that is something written to something visual, and you're going between those two mediums, which is really, really fun. As for creating a character of my own, I guess maybe if I wrote a book or something, or if I wrote a picture book and then illustrated it, but that's not something I have plans to do at this point. I feel like I've got so many ideas based on other things, or which take sort of bounce off of words or titles and things like that, that no, it's not really something I'm that interested in doing, just because of the kind of designer I am. I'm not a character designer, I'm a book designer. But that may change. I may decide to do something like that in the future. Okay, so Ka Zimmerman on Instagram asks, I was wondering what best books about book design you would consider as must-haves. So my favourite books about book design. So there's one that I picked up recently, which is called The Illustrated Dust Jacket. It's just come out in the past couple of months. It's by Martin Salisbury, and it's a really, really great sort of compendium of designs from the 1920s to the 1970s, that sort of mid-century design, and it's all about the illustrated dust jackets rather than other types of book design, which I'm really into, the whole illustration thing. Also, the book cover by Peter Mendelssohn is a fantastic resource. There's a lot of writing, his essays in that book, very interesting, and also he writes about and displays some of his killed covers, so covers that he's designed but didn't make it through to the final stages, or they went with a different type of design. That's also very, very cool. So those are probably my two top ones at the moment. I've got a lot of books in transit at the moment on their way back to New Zealand from the UK, so I'm hoping that they arrive soon and I will remember what is in all of them. But yeah, those would be the main ones. Also, Penguin do some really great books on the history of penguin book design. Very, very cool, and some great writing about the pieces as well. Lit and Pie asked, do you make book covers for self-published writers? So I have in the past. It's not something I especially advertise or that I go out of my way to get work in. It very much depends on the book and the author, and also what their budget is, because in some ways it's sometimes not quite worth my while to do a self-published book if I'm not getting paid that much for it, because generally speaking, self-published authors are working on quite a tight budget, which is absolutely fair enough. I completely understand that. So the answer is sometimes. Yeah, so I'm not completely opposed to the idea, but it just depends on the circumstances, really. Okay, so Tina John 012 asks a couple of questions. So the first one seems to be, how do you stay organised and keep track of things? Oh gosh, how do I keep organised and keep track of things? I try to prioritise each day what my sort of generally 3 most important things to get done are, and I keep a running to-do list on Google Docs, so that it's very easy for me to copy and paste things. So if I don't get everything on my to-do list for one day done, I can move it down to the next day or the next day I have available. I do have a couple of days of contract work for a local printer here. So sometimes that means that whole day is taken up with work there. And yeah, so it's an easy way to shuffle things around. I do also have a physical planner, but I don't tend to use it all that much. I tend to use it more for things like, say I'm recording a podcast on a particular day, because my running to-do list only runs generally a couple of weeks ahead, and sometimes something's booked well in advance, so I tend to use that for that. As for that, how do I keep track of everything? Yeah, that's the main way of that I do that. And yeah, just prioritize what's most important for that particular day, whether that's getting videos done. Well, that's the other thing that I do. I tend to film videos in bulk. So because I find that it's quite a draining thing to do, filming videos, I find. So I have to be in the right kind of mindset to do it. And generally it requires me putting a bit of lipstick on, which, yeah, I don't want to be doing that and setting up my camera and everything each time that I do an individual video. So I tend to have a few ideas backed up, and then I'll film a bunch in a row and try and get as much edited as I can, and then put them up. So there tends to be one YouTube day that I do a fortnight of filming, and then I'll schedule them out and hopefully get them edited relatively quickly. But it depends on what sort of videos they are as well. Some require quite a lot more planning. So if I'm doing something like the flat lays video, that required a bit more thinking ahead. And but if it's something like a book haul or a wrap up, that's relatively easy to do without too much preparation. I just need to open my Goodreads and remind myself what I've read recently, or remind myself what books I've bought recently. So Tina John's other question was, how do you set projects for yourself, like the Harry Potter covers, and fit them in with regular work? In the Harry Potter one, I just really wanted to do a daily challenge, and I tend to be overambitious with these sorts of things and set challenges which are way too big. Like even with Inktober, I think I almost bit off more than I could chew with that. But the nice thing about that one is that I could make it as complicated or as simple as I wanted. So to actually set them, I think I have ideas for projects quite a lot. So that has never really been a problem with me. If you ask me to, have a plan for the next 3 Inktobers for the next 3 years, I could probably do that quite easily. It's sort of setting those parameters. So for Inktober or the Harry Potter one, it was easy enough to say, okay, so it's this month that I'm doing this for, and then setting up parameters, say like I'm just going to do it in one particular color or 2 colors. So for the Harry Potter drawings, it was just in ink to begin with, and then I turned them into colourful, vintage-looking book covers. And for Inktober, I just said, okay, right, so they're book plates, they're based on book characters, and I'm only going to use black and gold ink. And that, setting those kind of restrictions definitely makes it easier to be creative within those restrictions. So if it were really open, then I feel like that would be too overwhelming. There would be too many choices, and you'd sit down to do something and go, there's too much to choose from, which is a mistake I made a couple of Inktober's ago. The first Inktober I did, where I didn't have a plan. In fact, I decided literally on the 1st of October that I was going to do it. So I kind of learned from that to have a plan. That definitely makes a big difference. Yeah, so that's basically how I do it. And I tend to either write myself a brief, which I did for the Harry Potter series, or for Inktober I did a video which was basically a brief for myself as well, and that was very, very helpful to, again, it's all about those restrictions. And finally, I have a couple of different questions here. These are all from Uniquely Rachel on Instagram. So the first is, what kind of training / education do you have? So like I said earlier, I studied art history and English. I didn't study graphic design, although I have done some online courses and things that have sort of sharpened my skills with that. But I've always been somebody who draws, and during my time at university, I missed that creative side of things. So I would do drawings and things alongside what I was doing. And I'm always happiest when I'm doing more of that creative stuff. So how did you get started in book design? Again, like I said before, it started off with the graphic design and sort of morphed into, well, there are people who do this for a job, so why can't I, kind of thing. Would you recommend college or a different method to learn? That's a tricky one, because I mean, obviously you don't have to, but it very much depends on your personality type. I'm the kind of person who can, when I set myself a goal or a challenge to do, I will do it. And I'm very good at sticking to my own rules that I set. But I know that some people are not so rigid like me, which is not necessarily a bad thing, but I think you just have to set up other ways to stay accountable. So if you're doing something like a 30-day challenge, that's a great way to improve your skills. And I know that a lot of people wouldn't do that unless they were accountable to somebody else. So whether that's your followers on Instagram or YouTube or wherever, or if it's just your family who are helping you out, or friends, or nothing like that. So that's a great way to learn. And also just finding resources online, places like Skillshare, even just YouTube. I find that, setting yourself projects to do and then finding the resources online as you go to solve the problems that you're trying to solve. That's how I've done it, more or less. But there is definitely a lot to be said for traditional education. But I think it's a matter of if you can afford it. If you get a scholarship, or if you can simply afford it, then I would say go for it. But it's not the be all and end all of design education. So we've got 3 more questions here. What's your least favourite part of a book design? Least favourite part? It depends on the design, I guess. Often it's to do with choosing colours. I think it's something that I find quite overwhelming again, because you've got so many choices, you've got this whole spectrum, and that can be quite paralysing, having that many choices. So I try to overcome that by sticking to a limited colour palette. But if it's something that requires more colours, then I find that often that takes longer than doing the original drawing, and can be quite frustrating and challenging at times. But I do like a challenge, so even though it might be one of my least favourite things, it's still pretty enjoyable. I'm pretty lucky with what I do. Very lucky, in fact. So who are your other... Oh, hang on. My favourite part of book design. Sometimes it's the hardest part, but I think it's probably my favourite, is actually coming up with the ideas, because that's the most important. If you can get a good idea and then execute it well, I find the execution of it a lot easier once I've got that idea. So getting that to start with is often the hardest, but yeah, it's the most rewarding. But I also love the just drawing and getting into that flow of design where just nothing else exists. It's just you and the pen and the paper. That's a wonderful feeling. So the final question is, who are your inspirations, like other book designers? I could do a whole video on this, and I probably will at some point, but I mean, the book designers who spring to mind are Leo Nichols, who I've interviewed a couple of times on this channel. Just has the most amazing style. I love his lettering and his the textures that he gets in his work, which is all digital, which I find amazing. I haven't really done a huge amount of purely digital stuff, so I think that's very impressive. And Coralie Bickford Smith is another one who does all the Penguin cloth-bound editions. They have a really vintage Victorian cloth-bound look to them, as the cloth-bound, and also her books, The Fox and the Star, and her most recent one, The Bird and the Worm. Just beautiful use of colour, and yeah, I love her illustrations. So those are the ones that sort of spring to mind immediately. I also really like Kimberly Glider's work, who I interviewed recently for the Spine podcast, which I'll link down below. Yeah, she was really fascinating to talk to. And yeah, those are the ones that spring to mind. But like I said, I can do a whole video on my favourite, not just book designers, but other artists and designers that I find inspiring in my work. So if you're interested in that, leave me a comment letting me know down below. So that's it for the questions. Thank you for all of you who sent me cues for me to A. Yeah, I had a lot of fun with this. If you want to find me elsewhere online, I am at Holly Dunn Design on Instagram and Twitter. And my Goodreads is linked down below, as is my website. And I've got some designs, Harry Potter designs, for sale on postcards and prints, and Inktober's there as well. And there are still some originals for sale if you're interested. As always, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!